Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely...
Okay, so I have a couple stories, but there's one main one that I will never forget. It will always freak me out. And it happened in my house when I was in high school. So I'll share the first story that led up to this main event, and then I'll talk about what really happened. So basically, I was in the 6th grade and I was having a sleepover with my friend, and I had no idea what a Ouija board was. No one's ever told me. This was early 2000s at this point. And I just wasn't educated on it. And so, of course, me being a 6th grader, thinking it was a board game, I'm like, yay, board game. Let's try something new, And so we were playing it. Nothing was really going on. We were asking some silly questions like, oh, who am I going to marry when I'm older, And it wasn't really saying a whole lot. But looking back on it, something that kind of freaks me out is when we asked who we were talking to, it went to a Z. And I'm not going to talk any further on that. If you know, you know. And so we went upstairs to go get some, water, some snacks, stuff like that. My parents asked me, what are you guys doing downstairs? And we say, we're playing the Ouija board. And my parents are like, nope, absolutely not. You are not playing that. Please stop doing that. And so we went downstairs, we closed it up. And what followed after that freaked me out. So we heard some voices that night, nothing crazy, honestly. It wasn't the super dramatic thing. But for years, I started hearing voices. I started seeing some things like people calling out my name in the middle of the night. I saw something in my closet, just random things here and there. I vividly remember when I was younger, this was middle school now. I don't remember the exact time, but my siblings were, young. And we were home alone. My parents were traveling that day. And so they were coming back home. We were alone. Our babysitter had left. And we all, for some reason, looked down to the right. And so that's where our hallway was. And we had a really long extended hallway. And then our parents' doorway was facing where that hallway was. And so we all look over at the same time. It was the weirdest thing. And we see this man, this really, really tall man standing there. And all of us say nothing. And we see this man turn and walk down the hallway. And so I look at them and I'm like, did you see that? And they're like, yeah. And I don't know what made us do this, but we went throughout the house and started trying to find if there was a man in the house. And if you've seen any horror movies, it's definitely not what you're supposed to do. Don't do that. But for some reason, that was, the mindset at the time. And we searched everywhere. Nothing was there, So there was no man. And we start moving on, knowing that, we had just seen some random dude in our house and he disappeared. And so for years after that, nothing crazy really happened. Again, sometimes I'd hear somebody walking in the house when I was home alone or in the middle of the night, but I just ignored it, tried not to give it any mind. But this is where the main event happens. So my brother passed away when I was in high school, and he lived in Tennessee with, my other family. My parents are, not together. So that side of the family, told me the news, and I went out and, flew out for the funeral. And so the day after the funeral, when I was flying home, my stepmom had lost her keys. And I went into her bathroom. She sets things in weird places. So she told me to look in her bathroom, look in her closet just to see if she dropped it, try to find, where the keys are so we can leave and go to breakfast together before I have to get on the plane. And I don't know what it was, but I felt such a difference in the air. The atmosphere went cold. I can't describe it. But if you've experienced something like this, it's a very eerie feeling. I felt like I was isolated, even though there were 3 other people in the house, but I was alone in that room. And all of a sudden I felt metaphorically cornered in the closet. and I heard my name being called with my brother's voice. And it's like time stopped. I knew it wasn't him because I thought that if it really was him, I wouldn't be freaked out. I wouldn't be feeling such a dark, gross feeling. Mind you, I'm already emotional because, you know, I loved my brother and he had just passed away. And so hearing his voice was like weird and it was emotional for me. And I ran out of that room because I felt like whatever was talking to me was not him and it wasn't safe. So I ran out, and my stepmom had been calling for me for 10 minutes and I didn't hear her. So literally, it's like time had stopped. So I told them about this at breakfast and they're like, oh, I wish, like, you know, he would talk to me. And I'm like, but it wasn't him. Like, this is the weird thing. It wasn't him, right? And so I go home, months go by, nothing happens. I'm grieving my brother, like, you know, I'm sad. And I talk to him sometimes, you know, at that point. I still do, but, you know, at this, you know, during this story, I was talking to him sometimes, and whatever it was that talked to me at my stepmom's house followed me to my house in Minnesota. So I was in Tennessee. That's where the first event happened. I'm back in Minnesota at my mom's house where, you know, the Ouija board thing had happened. We're keeping that in mind. So I go to bed one night. I'm the only one that lives upstairs, right? And so that's where like the front door is. My bedroom at the time was right next to the front door. And so we had a staircase going downstairs, and that's where my parents and my siblings were. My mom would stay upstairs in the kitchen, you know, dining room area until, you know, sometimes later in the night, just getting projects done. She's a very crafty person. So I went to bed knowing that she was, you know, kind of within the vicinity. I felt safe. And what I did was I always closed the doors and closed the blinds before I went to bed because, you know, I'd experienced some things. I was a little freaked out. And I had already some nights experienced sleep paralysis. And, you know, I was already kind of on edge about that. So close all the blinds, close the doors. And I had my radio on and I start, you know, kind of dozing off, and my radio sounds slower and like distorted all of a sudden. And I'm like, something's about to happen. And it did. So I felt like I heard the doors opening, but I was like, no, I'm going crazy. Like there's nobody else that would be, but it was both doors, like my closet door and my door to my bathroom that I heard opening. And I'm like, there's not two people in my room. Like there's no way. And I didn't even hear my room door open, the main door. And so I can't get up. It's like I am, you know, I'm in sleep paralysis. I can't do anything. I can't talk. I can't open my eyes. I can't move. And all of a sudden I feel myself getting up and I'm like, this isn't me. This isn't me. And so I feel myself get out of bed, like, but I don't feel like I'm in control of my own body. And I feel myself like, you know, reach my hand out for my door. And I feel the doorknob. I start, you know, opening my door. And all of a sudden I hear my brother's voice come from my bathroom and him saying, Maddie, I need to talk to you. And I don't know how, but somehow, some way I was able to talk in that moment. And I'm like, no, get out. Like, I know this isn't you. I don't want to hear it. And I don't know what it was, but it was like, okay, I'll leave. Like, okay, you'll leave. Okay. But here I am, like kind of traumatized because, you know, it's my brother's voice again. And I'm still grieving. Like this is only a couple months after he passed. And so I'm like, well, what if it was my brother? And I carried on that guilt for so long thinking like, well, what if it was him? Like, but it was that creepy feeling again. And I'm like, you know what? If this was really my brother, there is no way that he would do this to me, that he would like freak me out, that he would like try to do all this stuff. Like, there's just no way. I feel like he would come and try to peacefully talk to me and have a conversation. But, you know, that's a whole other conversation. And so I opened my eyes, like after I muster enough courage, you know, I open my eyes and all my doors are open. All of them. And nobody was upstairs. My mom is already fast asleep at this point. It was like midnight. And I know this story sounds crazy, but this really happened and it still freaks me out to this day. And I don't know. So I just wanted to answer this question right here because I've been asked a couple different times in the comment section about this specific thing. So this started when I was in 6th grade. I know I mentioned that before, but I was only 12 and I didn't have any education on any of this, and neither did my friend that brought it in. When we were discussing the sleepover originally that day, I remember her specifically telling me that it was like Candyland and that we should try it. So that's why I was okay with playing it. I had no idea that it involved any of this spiritual stuff. So after we were done playing it, we were, so freaked out by what my parents said that we just closed it, and then she brought it home and told me she threw it away. And her parents actually bought her that board game. So it was a little interesting. But anyway, I did see a lot of professionals after this. It is closed. The door is closed. But unfortunately, the portal in the house is still open. And I have had many discussions with people that deal with things like that. And things still happen, unfortunately, in that house. I can talk a little bit more about that if you're interested in hearing more stories and kind of what still goes on in the house today. I don't live there anymore. I am fully grown adult. I have my own house now. Nothing weird happens in my house. Nothing has followed me over there. So it is only at that house now. And it is attached now to something else. So like I said, again, I can talk more about that if you're interested in hearing more stories and me discussing that a little bit further. But yeah, the door is closed now. And for all those people saying I need Jesus or an exorcism, I was never possessed. I am a Christian. I did talk to a lot of pastors about this afterwards, many years down the road, and everything's fine. Like I said before, this happened 14 years ago with the incident with my brother, or the entity, as you could say. That's the last time I had an encounter like that with my brother. So, yeah.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So this is going to be my part 2 of the original video I made a few days ago about a Ouija board and the entity that I encountered after playing it. So just a disclaimer, if you have not watched that video and you aren't comfortable with conversation about those topics, you don't have to watch it, but I just want to warn you that I do mention it. I do not say the entity's name out of respect for myself and everyone watching. But if you are interested, you can go ahead and watch and come back to this one. So I had a few people in the comments ask me about making more videos about my paranormal experiences. And here is another one that also happened in high school a few years after that original encounter that I discussed before. So I was in the 11th grade and we were rebuilding my house. So we all moved to a townhome nearby. And during the first couple weeks, everything was totally fine. I kind of felt like I was getting a break from everything that had happened at the house prior. And it was quite peaceful for a little bit. But all of a sudden, when I decided to do homeschooling for that year and take a little bit of a break from public school, I was home alone about 95% of the time. My parents worked full-time and my siblings went to school in person as well. So whenever I would be on the main level where the kitchen, the bathroom, and the radiator room was, I always felt like I was being watched all the time. I always felt like there was somebody standing right next to me or watching behind me. I was constantly looking over my shoulder. So I vividly remember one day I was going to meet a friend. I don't remember what we were doing, but I was getting ready and I always walked through the garage to get to my car. So as I was walking through, making sure all the doors were locked up and I was about to walk underneath the garage door, it slammed down almost on top of me. And I'm very glad that I caught that it was falling, or else I would have gotten very severely injured. So I went to my car after this whole thing and I'm like in shock because nothing has ever happened like that. And the garage door had seemed to be fine prior. So I was like, what the heck just happened, you know? And for some reason, I had an inkling to look up at my window to where my bedroom was. And I see a man standing there that I've never seen before, laughing at me. And as I'm looking at this man laughing at me, he all of a sudden disappears. And I was like, oh, heck no, I'm going away. Like, I sped away from the house so fast. I wanted nothing to do with that. Especially after all the stuff that I had already been through, there was no way I was dealing with that in that moment. So I left, and then I came back later that night when my family was already, dozing off. Everybody was in their rooms. So I came inside and I sat on the couch, and I was going to watch some TV for a little bit and unwind. And from that area in the house where the radiator room was, I all of a sudden hear a voice saying my name. And this is exactly how they said it. They were like, Maddie, oh, Maddie, and just kept doing that. And it was not a voice that I recognized. It wasn't like a person that I knew. And I was like, nope, nope, this is like round 2. Absolutely not. So I ran upstairs, and as I'm running upstairs, I see a figure in the corner. I'm like, nope, I'm ignoring this. I'm sorry, no. So I went to my room, and I went to sleep, and I felt a little bit more comfortable as I was going to sleep. But my mom, she woke up around 4 a.m., and she usually went downstairs to go do her devotionals before all of us would wake up in the morning, just to get, some time by herself. And she gets a weird, gross feeling all of a sudden. And she sees a figure in front of her, just standing there staring at her, almost like taunting her in a way with how it was trying to walk towards her. And at the same time that she was seeing this entity in front of her, I had a weird, gross dream. I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen The Grudge. I've never personally seen it, but I know what the girl looks like, and I've seen, commercials and things like that. So I see her face show up in my dream, and it's gaping, and things are coming out of her mouth, and it was just so disgusting. And I remember waking up suddenly and not being able to fall back to sleep. I was just so terrified. And I wake up later, go downstairs, and I tell my mom about this dream. I'm like, Mom, this really creepy thing happened. I don't know what to do. And she's like, when did that happen? And I told her. She told me, at that same time, I saw an entity down here, and I got rid of it. And it sounds like you woke up right as it went away. So that's something that I will never forget. Obviously, I still remember it now, and it freaks me out. But I've had multiple encounters like this, even recently. So if you want to hear more of those stories, I will share them. But that's another one that I will never forget. Let me know what you guys think. Hello everyone. So I have seen in my comment section under some of my other videos that I have posted that you guys were interested in me sharing some more stories about my paranormal experiences. Since I have so many stories, I thought that I would make this into a series. So if you are interested in watching more of my story times, give me a follow if you'd like, and stay tuned because I will be doing these every week. Also, I have had some people private message me and ask me if I would be willing to share their stories, which I am open to that. So if you are interested, I will be taking submissions and I will give you credit. However, if you do want to stay anonymous, I will disclose that at the beginning of the story time. If you haven't watched my first video that I made of this series, you can go ahead and go to my profile and watch it if you're interested. I do want to give a disclaimer that I do discuss an experience with the Ouija board and a specific entity that I did encounter while playing. So if you're not comfortable with that, you definitely don't have to watch it, but it does kind of go into today's paranormal experience that we will be discussing. So I know I'm jumping timelines a little bit, but this is another experience that I had that absolutely still sits with me to this day. And I still wonder about what may have happened behind the scenes and if something did happen following what I'm about to tell you. So this will be an experience that I had with the same demonic entity from the first story time, and them threatening mine and my friend's life. So just to set the scene a little bit, I was in middle school for this one. And growing up, I always went to a summer camp with my family. And then I also went to kids camp by myself, just with my friends, you know, hanging out. And that year, I specifically had met a new person that I hadn't seen before. He was new to the area, had just moved with his family, and they wanted him to make some new friends. And I'm a really outgoing person. So, of course, me being me, I introduced myself and I made it my mission to be friends with this person because he was very shy. He kept to himself, and I wanted him to have a fun time at camp with all of us. So I ended up getting to know him throughout the week and learned a lot about him. We became very close and we began a really great friendship. So after I came back home from camp, I'd still been experiencing some interesting things around the house. And this time, my parents were doing some different things upstairs, including my room, kind of like remodeling and stuff like that, and redoing things. So I did sleep in the guest room that night, which happened to be downstairs. And this was close to the room that I had done all of this original stuff in with the Ouija board. So I remember that I heard something walking down that same hallway where I saw the man. Just for context. Don't know if this is the same one, but I'm just gonna say that out loud. So I heard footsteps, and it's almost like he was wearing chains, because I remember hearing chains. So he's walking down, and I hear him come to the foot of my bed, and I almost felt, I didn't see this, but I almost felt like something was leaning over me, and he said, "I'm gonna kill you and your friend." And I audibly, out loud, said, "What?" Because I was like, there's no way somebody's saying this to me. And he said my friend's name. And so I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm going to kill you and your friend." And I was like, "You need to get out of my room now." And I did speak the Lord's name over it. I just want to say that I am a Christian. So I did do that. He ended up leaving my room, and I heard him go back down the hallway. The crazy thing is I ended up telling my brother about this story years later. And he told me that that same night, he had heard a man come out of his room with chains, he felt like he was wearing, and walk down the hallway towards me. So if you've watched some of my other videos, my brother is sometimes included in them. And he was definitely included in this one. So nothing happened to him. They didn't, like, the entity didn't talk to him, but I've always wondered if something ever happened to my friend because I never heard from him again. And I don't know how he's doing or if he's even still around. I don't like to assume the worst, but that's just something that stuck with me for a very long time. It did freak me out, and I didn't know that entities would necessarily threaten to you, if you will. So let me know what you think about it. I would love to hear your thoughts, and let me know if you're interested in submitting anything. I'm always open to conversation. Thank you guys for listening to the story time.
Tell me about the weirdest dream you've had that you don't actually think was a dream.
I definitely have one of these stories. So I think I'll share it just because it was very encouraging to me, and it really warmed my heart, and maybe it will help someone else out by hearing this story. So I just want to preface by saying that I have had many dreams in the past, and even still do have some where they seem very, very real, and they do end up happening in real time later down the road. So this is not the first time I've had an experience like this. Over the last couple of years, I've had a lot of conversations with doctors about my fertility. So this started a couple years ago when they found a tumor in my fallopian tube, and it was eating my ovary. So I ended up getting scheduled for surgery and had, a lot of very scary conversations about me not being able to have kids, the possibility that I might not be able to have them, and what my options are going forward when I do decide that I might want to have a family, if that is the route I want to go down in the future. So obviously this was very devastating for me. I still remember the day very clearly and how devastated I was. I called my family, I was crying, didn't understand, you know, why this was happening. And also, I didn't see any signs that I had a tumor. Not that you always do, but it was just very shocking for me. So after I got the surgery, the doctor did tell me they were able to save my ovary and my fallopian tube. However, it would be very, very hard for me to have children, if at all, because they also found a lot of scarring around my reproductive organs, and they also found a lot of endometriosis. They were able to remove some of it, but it wasn't, you know, cleared out completely. So we're just keeping that in mind with this story. Anyway, so fast forward a couple years later, I actually get pregnant. It was very unexpected, and mind you, I have in my mind that I probably can't have kids. So this is my rainbow baby. And I remember the day before I was supposed to have my ultrasound to find out the gender of the baby, I was very, very convinced at this point that I was having a boy. Not necessarily because of my symptoms, but mainly just because I just had like this weird feeling that it might be a boy, and people were always, you know, also in my ear saying like, oh, it's going to be a boy. And, you know, it gets to you, you know. So I remember going to sleep that night and just being really excited for my ultrasound the next day, and me being able to finally think of like names and all that kind of stuff. I was just really trying to like soak up the whole experience, considering I'd, you know, been grieving my fertility for years at this point. So that night I had a dream. And it was a very, very vivid dream about this little girl. She had these crazy blue eyes, very bright blue eyes, kind of like wavy, curlyish hair, very similar to my hair color. She was wearing a beautiful dress, and she was about a year old, and she kept calling me mommy. And I remember just smiling at her, and we were playing outside, and she was just smiling back at me. And it felt like the dream only lasted about 5 minutes, but you know, when you're having dreams, it never feels like how long you're actually sleeping. So I wake up the next morning and immediately had this thought in my mind, like, I might be having a girl. So later that day I go to my ultrasound, and they tell me that I'm having a baby girl. And I'm just kind of like, really? Like, am I? That's crazy. Like, I just had this crazy dream last night, and I really felt like that could have been like my own kid. Like, I just felt so much peace having that dream and then waking up the next morning. And, you know, I knew her name. She had like told me her name in this dream. And this is so crazy, but after my daughter was born, she looked familiar to me, like very, very familiar. Like I had already seen her before. And now my daughter is around 19 months. And she's the little girl I had a dream about. I'm going to get emotional, I'm sorry, but she's the little girl I had a dream about. And I will never forget. For many years, I carried a lot of guilt, thinking that it may have been my brother trying to come to me and have a conversation. But it has since been communicated to me by him directly in a very peaceful way that it was not him in those encounters, and it was the smart choice to say no and tell that entity to go away. Here's the thing. There's a lot of different opinions surrounding this entity. I do understand that. However, in my specific situation, what I have experienced, it is not good. It is not safe. And it is definitely not something that you want to mess with. I can't change the past and what happened, but I can heed a warning to everybody to not go near a Ouija board. I don't care what you believe in. It's fine. Believe in what you want, but don't do it. Just don't. My opinion on the Ouija board is mess around and find out. That's exactly what happened to me. And guess what happened? Y'all saw the video. I was given a specific warning before posting that video. I had a vision of a man who came to me. He was in my home, my current home right now. He walked down the hallway, got in my face and said, "Do not post that video. I don't want you talking about what happened." Guess what I did? I talked about what happened. And now I am suffering some consequences from that. But guess what? I wanted everybody to know what can happen when you mess with things that you don't understand. Now, I can't control what y'all do or what you say, but if you keep commenting that entity's name in my comments, I will delete them, because even saying the name can be dangerous, and I really just don't want to deal with it, and I don't want other people to be put in a position where they have to deal with it. Anyway, if y'all have more questions about anything that's happened, any more experiences that I've had, I will be doing more story times. I have so many stories to share, but please stop saying the name. That is all I ask. All right, have a peaceful day. I am back with another paranormal story time for you guys. If you haven't seen my first story time that I posted, it is pinned on my profile if you are interested in watching that. It does kind of explain all of the nitty-gritty details that I get into with why I do experience a lot of paranormal things now. But long story short, I played with a Ouija board when I was in the 6th grade. I was 12 years old, and I have had a significant encounter with a specific entity that is very popular, if you will, when it comes to playing the Ouija board. I have had paranormal experiences before that, but I think that specific situation did exacerbate it and made it a little bit more dramatic, if you will. I do want to preface that I am really bad at recording these, and I'm also very bad at editing, and I jump timelines a lot, so forgive me. All right, now to what actually happened. So I will say that as I tell stories, it will not be consistent with timelines. I will say that. Here's why. Because I don't remember everything that happened all the time. It is very random when the memory comes back, and then I will share it as it comes. So I'm sorry if that bothers some of you, but that's just how my mind works. So this specific situation happened very shortly after my first encounter in the 6th grade. So I was still around 12, 13 years old, and I'd gone to sleep that night kind of feeling a lot of fear and feeling very unsettled, not knowing if something kind of negative was going to happen. Whenever I'd have those feelings, that's usually what would happen. So just to clarify, I had a very, very vivid dream that night. I still remember it, clear as day. I will never forget it. So I was laying in my bed in this dream, just like I was in real life. And I heard a storm outside, and all of a sudden my roof came off of my house and started like spinning everywhere, but my room was intact. It was very odd. I knew I was dreaming. I knew this wasn't real life. And I heard a voice, a very, very evil voice, call out my name in this dream. And I did respond, knowing that whatever I was encountering was very, very evil. And he said, "There's going to be a day where you." And I didn't know what to say. So I didn't really say anything. I got myself to wake up, but I woke up with a huge startling sound. This is what I heard once I woke up. Obviously, that is a very unsettling sound to wake up to, and I really thought there was somebody standing in my room clapping. Even though that sounds really ridiculous, I couldn't see anything, and I couldn't really equate it to anything else. What felt like probably 10 minutes of me just sitting there contemplating if I wanted to get up and potentially, not be on this earth anymore if I got up. Sounds dramatic, but that's how I felt. I turned my light on, and my entire ceiling was flooded. Mind you, at that point, we had really no issues in the house, and there was no reason for my roof, like my ceiling, I should say, to be flooded that way. I don't know what that dream meant or if there really was any sort of specific meaning behind it. I haven't really sought it out because it did freak me out so badly. If any of you guys have any idea of what it could mean, feel free to let me know. I'm open to suggestion, but it is something that has stayed in my mind for a long time. I've never forgotten that dream. And I've never forgotten that right when I woke up, my whole ceiling was flooded. If you've made it this far, that means that you've listened to the entire video. Thank you so much for coming by and watching and being interested in my paranormal videos. Let me know if you liked it, if you want to hear more, and I will see you hopefully in the next video.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
Okay, when I was younger, probably like 13, 14, 15 years old, somewhere around that time, I would always fall asleep on the couch at night watching TV. I didn't have a TV in my bedroom, so I would fall asleep on the couch at night watching TV, and my mom would always like yell at me the next day about sleeping on the couch, like, when you're sleepy, go to bed. Well, one night, I was babysitting my little cousin. He was about like 1 or 2, and we both fell asleep on the couch watching TV, right? So he's sleeping behind me on the couch so that he doesn't fall off and hurt himself. And, you know, I fall asleep, and at some point in the night, I wake up. And when I wake up, my little cousin is no longer like behind me. He is now kind of like laying over my body, kind of hanging off the couch, right? And so I'm like, whoa, what's this kid doing, right? So I pick him up, I put him back, I fall asleep again. Later on, I wake up again, right? And I don't know what's waking me up, right? I just know I'm waking up, right? Kind of, I don't know. I like almost like intuitively, I'm waking up. And this time when I wake up, this kid is now down the couch, head facing the opposite direction of me, down by my knees, right? Now he's down by my knees, and I'm like, what is going on with this kid? Like, he never sleeps crazy like this. I've never had this happen with him. So I just get up, I get him, I put him back. You know, he's not awake, he's knocked out, he's, you know, hard asleep. And then I go back to sleep. So then a little bit later, I wake up for a third time. This time, my little cousin is all the way down the couch, body hanging over the arm of the couch on the opposite end, like just hanging over it, right? And at this point, I'm like freaked out because I'm like, there's no way this kid is getting up and moving himself in these weird positions. And it's freaking me out. And I'm more like, I feel like someone is trying to steal my baby cousin. And so I wake up, my little crazy teenage self, I wake up, I get him, I put him back, I sit up, and I just kind of stay awake. I'm like convinced that something's trying to steal my baby. I don't know what, but I'm going to stay awake because it's not happening on my watch, right? So I stay up all night. The next day I tell my mom, and she's all like, Ebony, you're not supposed to be sleeping on the couch anyway, right? That's kind of how she takes it, right? So whatever. Fast motherfucking forward. I fall asleep on the couch by myself one day, and for some reason in the middle of the night I wake up. And when I wake up and I look over, there is this little short gremlin looking monster person, like really, really short, tall enough that my face laying down on the couch and his face are level, just standing in front of me, just staring at me. I mean, just staring, not saying anything, not moving, but just like staring me down. I freak out. I'm getting goosebumps right now thinking about it. I freak out. I grab the cover. I turn my back to it. I cover my head, and I just start to pray. I just start praying all the prayers my grandma ever taught me. Just praying. And I guess I must have prayed and laid there like, if I don't move and it can't see my face, it can't hurt me type deal, until I fell asleep. And then the next day I woke up and I told my mom, And she was like, Ebony, you probably just had a really bad dream. That probably was a nightmare. It probably just felt like it was real. And I was like, no, it was real. And I'm convinced that whatever the hell that was tried to steal my baby cousin. And I don't care who believes me. I don't care if my mom believed me. I don't care if she thinks I had a nightmare. I never fell asleep on that couch again. And I know something was trying to steal my baby cousin that night. That's all I gotta say. Okay, another story. Same house. I'm older now. I'm back home because I am transitioning from the military, right? So I'm home. I have a son now. I think he's like in kindergarten at this point. And so during the day, my mom is at work and my son is in school, and I am taking a online master's class. So I'm home by myself all day. And all right, so I'm in my room. I am doing my homework, and I hear what sounds like someone running in the attic. And I stop, and I'm like, okay. Like, I turned everything down, and like I listen in a little closely to make sure like I heard what I thought I heard. And again, I hear somebody run in the attic, right? I don't hear any voices, just the footsteps, right? And it doesn't sound like a grown-up running. It sounds like a child's feet, right? It's like a small person, like a child maybe. And so I'm like, oh, like, what is that, right? At this point, you guys, I don't skip a beat when I hear or see stuff now. I just, stay away from me. Just don't come bothering me. So my mom comes home, and I tell her, I say, hey, Mom, today I heard someone running in your attic. And she's all like, Ebony, you probably just heard like a squirrel on the roof, right? And I'm like, nope, it wasn't on the roof. I know the difference between an animal scurrying and footsteps. These were footsteps. Sounds like the footsteps of a child running in your attic, right? She doesn't believe me. I'm like, whatever, your house is haunted, right? Another day, I'm sitting in my room, same scenario. My mom's at work, son's at school, and I hear what sounds like a door open, like a creepy, creaky door. It's opening very slowly, or maybe it's closing. I'm not really sure. And it's really loud, and it takes like 10 seconds to like open and stop. And so I get up and I walk around the house. I'm like, what could possibly make that sound, right? And I look at all the doors. The door to my bedroom's wide open. It's not moving. My mom's bedroom door's closed. The bathroom door is closed. The closet doors are closed. I walk out into the living room, through the kitchen, the laundry room door is closed. There's no doors open to have been moving, with the wind or, whatever in the house. I even moved the doors myself to try to see if I can replicate the sound of this door, and I cannot. I cannot get any door in the house to make that sound. So then I think maybe it was the storm door. So I go to the front door, I open, the storm door is securely closed. It's not super windy outside. There is no door anywhere near me because this sound sounded really close to me, like right around the corner, that could have made that sound, right? And there's nobody else in my house to be opening doors either. So my mom comes home. I tell her again, I said, hey, Mom, today I heard a creepy door open in your house. And she's all like, oh, I've been here, X amount of years. I've never heard any creepy doors opening, Ebony. Like, that was just your imagination. And I was like, no, I heard this door. I investigated this door. I investigated the sound. I could not replicate this sound with any door. It was the sound of a creepy door. Like, if you think about a horror story or a horror movie where some heavy, old, haunted door is opening, that's what it sounded like, right? So she blows me off again. I'm like, whatever. I'm just letting you know your house is haunted. Another day, right? This day I picked Ethan up from school now. And he is in the living room watching TV. So typically he gets a snack. He gets to watch a little bit of TV before he does his homework for the night. And so he's in the living room. He's watching TV. And I'm back in my room. And guess what I hear? Creepy door starts to open, right? And I'm like, there goes that creepy door, right? But before I know it, my son comes walking into the room, like kind of fast and kind of with a scared look on his face. And he's like, Mom, did you hear that? What was that? Like, where is that door? You know, because he can hear that. It sounds like a door opening, right? He's like, where is the door, Mom? I'm like, babe, I don't know where that door is, but I want you to tell your grandma when she comes home what you heard, right? So my mom comes home. I said, hey, Ethan, you know, tell grandma what you heard today. And so he asked grandma, he says, Grandma, I heard a really creepy door in your house. Like, where is it? Where is that door? And my mom's like, oh my God, Ebony, now you got the baby saying he heard a door. And I'm like, look, like, I heard it. Your grandchild heard it. Something's opening a door somewhere in your house. Probably that little freaking gremlin dude. Because the attic is not a big space, right? It's not a big space where you can go up there. There's no rooms up there. There's no doors up there. It's probably just like insulation. It's like a crawl space, right? We heard the door open. There is a door to something opening in this house. I'm just telling y'all what I heard. So to answer this question, no, my mom does not still live in this house. Shortly after or before I graduated high school, my mom got married and she moved in with my stepdad. But I do have scary experiences from my stepdad's house. One in particular that really stands out to me. I was home for the weekend and a couple of my friends decided to come over to visit me. And for context, I'll tell you the way this house is laid out. You like come up the driveway and then you come through the garage, and most people just enter the house through the garage entrance. That entrance brings you into the dining room area. And on one side of the dining room, you have the kitchen. It's a U-shaped kitchen. I think in the middle, there's a sink of the U. In the middle of the U, there's a sink. And so if you were standing there at that sink, your back would be to the dining room. On the other side of the dining room is the living room. And if you were sitting on the couch facing the television, your back would also be to the dining room. And so it's just this big open concept space you can see from the living room all the way to the kitchen and vice versa. So me and my friends are sitting on the couch in the living room. I think we're watching some award show. We are talking and just catching up. My mom is in the kitchen. I think she may have cooked dinner that night, so she was like just cleaning the kitchen up before she went to bed. So me and my friends are talking, and then I hear my mom start to hum a song or a tune. And I don't recognize the tune. I don't recognize the song. I can't even tell you what the genre of music this is because it's just really foreign to me. Like I've never heard this song before. I've never heard this sound before. And I'm wondering in my head, like what is my mom singing? Like what is this? So I ignore her. I continue to talk to my friends. And as we keep talking, the humming gets louder. Right? It gets louder. And so we kind of have to raise our voices to kind of talk over the humming. And I think we kind of make eye contact and we like look at each other, but like no one speaks on it. Like we don't talk about it. We just like, they kind of look at me like, you know, your mom you really feeling this song, you know? They kind of just give me that eye. And so we just keep talking. Well, the humming gets louder. Like at this point now, it's so loud that if we want to have our conversation, we're going to have to kind of yell over this humming. And so my friends finally are like, what is that your mom is singing? And I'm like, I don't know. And so I just turn around and I look back to my mom and I say, hey, Mom, what is that you're singing? What is this tune? Like, why are you like humming so loud? And so my mom stops and she looks at me and she's like, I'm not humming, Ebony. I thought you guys were humming. And I'm like, no, like we're here just having a conversation, you know? And she's all like, Ebony, are you kidding? Like, are you joking? Like, are you playing around? And I'm like, no, I'm not joking. That's not us. And so then my mom like just looks freaked out. She says, you know what? I'm going to bed. Like, no, I'm going to go to bed. And so she just like stopped cleaning up. And then she just went to bed. And so then my friends are looking and they're just like, is she joking? Like, she's joking, right? And I'm like, no, I don't think she's joking. Like, I don't think that was her. And they're like, well, who was it? And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, do you guys have ghosts? And I'm like, I've never had this happen before. Like, I don't know how to explain that, right? So then they're freaked out, and now they want to go home. So they're like, you know, walk us to our car. And I'm like, not happening. Like, I'm not going to walk you guys outside in the dark and then have to walk myself back in, you know, all by myself. And so I'm like, I'll walk you to the door, I'll turn on all the lights so you guys, you know, can see good on the way out. So I turned on all the lights in the garage and, you know, outside the house that I could turn on. And then they like just walked out real fast, got in their car and drove off. And then I just shut the door and, you know, locked up. And then I went to bed. But this is a different house. Creepy stuff is still happening around me. But it was a very distinct voice of a woman. The tune I cannot place. If I had to guess, I would say like 1920s, 1930s. Like it was some type of tune. Like it wasn't a song or a genre that I can pinpoint. So super creepy, very scary. There you go. So this comment right here. So I think sleep paralysis and what I experienced that night are like totally different. At least when I experienced sleep paralysis, it was not the same. Because like I told you guys, I was able to turn my back and cover my head, which is why I feel like I wasn't dreaming. Because in my dreams, I don't remember, like, I don't have a sense of feeling in my dreams. Like, and my dreams kind of look like a movie more so, and not like my reality, like the real life. My dreams don't really look like reality to me. There's always like a, I don't know, fuzziness around them or some type of like, it's not, you know, crystal clear visuals in my dreams at least. But for sleep paralysis, which I think for me is super different than what I experienced that night. Whenever I have sleep paralysis, I hate it because I feel like I can't breathe. And I was talking to my mom about it because like I really hate sleep paralysis. And my mom was telling me, she said, hey, you're dreaming when you have sleep paralysis. You just need to wake up. You got to figure out a way to wake yourself up. And she said, what I should do is I should look around. She said, look around in the room because there's going to be something in that room that's different from what's in your real life, right? So if you're in your bedroom, there's going to be an extra window that doesn't exist in your bedroom. There's going to be an extra door that doesn't exist in your bedroom. There's going to be something in that room that's different than it is in reality, and you'll know you're dreaming and it'll help wake you up. So I did this one night. I woke up in sleep paralysis and I said, okay, I'm going to look around. And so I started looking around the room, and sure enough, I had a closet in my room that was in a totally different place. Like the door in my bed, I can see the door from my bed. In the dream, the door was on a totally different side. The closet was like flipped where I couldn't even see the door. And the light was on in the closet, which I would not have gone to sleep like that. So I'm like, okay, this is a dream. I'm dreaming. So now that I know I'm dreaming, I continue to look around. And I think that was my mistake. I continued to look around to see what else is different in this room. And as I look around, I see my bedroom door is open. I don't sleep with my bedroom door open because I lock my door, close and lock my door every night. Because my thought process, if someone ever breaks into my space, they're going to have to wake me up to get at least to me because I got to get through my door. So as I see that my door is open, I see like a shadow stand up out in like that space that's outside my bedroom and start to walk towards my door. And it gets closer, and now I'm freaking out because I'm like, oh shit, what is this? And I'm still in sleep paralysis, so I can't move. I'm not waking up. And it comes in, and then it starts lifting me up off the bed. And like I'm freaking out, so I do what I do best when I'm freaked out. I just start praying. You know, I just started closing my eyes and praying, and eventually I wake up, and I never do that anymore. I never look around in sleep paralysis. Nope. I just immediately start to focus on moving my big toe and my breathing, and I don't play around with sleep paralysis. But this is definitely not what I felt that night. And I'm not saying this comment is saying that, but other comments were telling me you probably had sleep paralysis. You were in sleep paralysis. I think it's different. It's different. I cannot draw. Sorry. It's not going to be helpful if I try to draw it because I cannot draw at all. My mom can draw though. Anyway, I will try to describe it really quickly. So he was about the size of a 1-year-old, like as far as like the height and the width of it. His face was maybe a little bigger than the normal human face, just a little bit. I feel like it was more flat. Like I don't remember seeing a protruding nose or a protruding chin or big ears or anything like that. He just had the face just looked really old and wrinkly, like a prune, like just bunches of wrinkles in it. And he had probably a bigger mouth than normal because he just had a grin on his face. And I feel like the grin was long. Like it was like all the way over here. And he just like, you know, just no teeth. He didn't show me any teeth, but he was just like making a smile and he was just like staring at me. And his eyes seemed normal, like they were, you know, big almond shaped eyes. I don't remember them glowing or anything like that. He just stood there. He didn't move. He didn't talk. He just stood there with the smile, just like staring in my eyes as I'm staring at him. It's almost like I want you to see me, or like waiting for me to make a move. And you guys know what my move was. I made the best move, which was no thank you. So that's all I really remember. I don't remember what he wore. I don't remember seeing a hat. That was pretty much it. That's what I remember. Okay, another ghost story for you guys. My hometown is rumored to be, in some locations, like a burial ground. I don't know how true it is. It's Mississippi, it's small town Mississippi. And specifically, there are some apartment buildings in my hometown that people say it is believed it was built on some type of burial ground. But there's a lot of paranormal activity that happens in this apartment building. So if there's some ghost hunters looking for like some ghosts to hunt, I mean, that place is definitely haunted. Particularly for me, I remember one instance. Actually, I remember a few things that happened that made me feel kind of uneasy, but this story is specific to this one instance. A friend of mine, we were walking around the neighborhood and we decided to stop at another friend's house. She lived in these apartments. She was a lot older than me, of course. She had her own apartment. And when we stopped by, she said that she was on her way out to go to the store. And she asked us if we wanted to stay or if we wanted to come with her to the store. And we were like, oh, we'll just stay here until you get back, right? And then she said, I just want you guys to know that I have ghosts. And we were like, okay. I guess we didn't really take it that seriously for some reason, but she told us that she has ghosts and that her ghost will jump in her bed, will make a lot of noise in her bedroom. And she says typically she just yells in to the ghost and just tells them like to cut out the noise, to stop it. And they usually listen and they stop. And we're just like, okay, we'll wait. We'll be okay. So she leaves. We sit down in the living room and we, just talk and watch TV or whatever. And then we hear this like banging in her room. And it sounds like someone took their fist and just kind of like banged on the wall like 2 or 3 times, right? And we kind of look at each other, turn down the TV, kind of thinking like, did you hear that? And we didn't hear anything else. So we were just like, maybe it was coming from another apartment, like maybe a neighboring apartment. Somebody was being kind of loud in the apartment, right? We just kind of ignored it. Then a couple minutes later, we hear the same banging, but it's like more, right? It's like, instead of hitting the wall like 2 times, they hit the wall like 6 times, right? And we're like, wait a minute, like that really does sound like it's coming out of her bedroom, right? And we just sit there and we just kind of listen. And then eventually we don't hear anything. So we just kind of go back to doing whatever we were doing. I truly believe that if you don't, when people tell you don't acknowledge it, right? Don't acknowledge it. I think that's a thing, right? Because I feel like sometimes if you don't acknowledge, it gets louder, or it continues. So we didn't acknowledge, and then the next thing you know, we heard that banging started in her room, and it came from her room. It's just like a 1 bedroom apartment. So 1 bed, 1 bath apartment. It came from her bedroom into the living room where we were, and then it went into the kitchen, and it like banged on like the cabinets and the walls in the kitchen, and we just jumped up and ran. We just jumped up and ran out of there. Like, we were freaked out. We were outside. Like, what the heck was that? Like, it made sure we knew it was in the apartment with us. Like, acknowledge me. So we run outside. Like, she gets back and she's like, you know, what's going on? What happened? And we were like, there's something in your apartment. She was like, I told you guys I have ghosts. And we were like, but we didn't. It's not that we didn't believe her, but it was just like, I don't know. We weren't ready for that. But that was definitely a ghost. And it was creepy. And in those apartments, there are lots of other stories that I've heard from other people. Like seeing children in their room, watching them when they wake up, or seeing like, I even want to say someone said that their son would wake up and his room would be bloody or something like that. And I definitely know one of my friends, her daughter had an imaginary friend. And I remember her coming in one day when I was there saying, hey, Mom, Katie, I'm just going to say a name because I don't know what the name was. Katie wants to know if she can do XYZ. And I said, oh, Katie, whose daughter is Katie? I don't know anybody with a daughter named Katie. And she said, girl, that's her imaginary friend. And I was like, her what? Right? So then I like follow her back into the living room just to like watch her, to see her talk to this imaginary friend. And she's like having a full blown conversation, like talking back, like saying, no, Katie, don't do that. Let me show you. I'll show you. She's like answering Katie. She's like having a full blown conversation with Katie. And I just got like goosebumps. And I was just like, no, I don't think Katie's imaginary. Katie might be a ghost. I'm pretty sure of it. So there you go. Another ghost story. So here's another story for you guys. But it's about sleep paralysis. It's not my story. This is my mom's story. Because I saw a couple people in my comments asking me questions about sleep paralysis. So I think sleep paralysis is different for everybody. And I think in the South, a lot of black people, at least I know black people in the South, describe sleep paralysis as the witch riding your back. They say the witch is going to ride your back. The witch came into my dream, and rode my back. Or they describe it as some type of like demon or something riding their back. So my mom describes it this way. She says that she feels like there's something on her, pushing her down, holding her down. So much so that she said once she was able to like move enough to like grab its finger and bend it back. And I don't remember what she said happened when she did that. Like, I don't know if she just woke up. But like me personally, I never feel like there's something on me or holding me down during my sleep paralysis. Like, I literally just feel like I can't move. And sometimes I feel like I can't breathe. Like, I have to like stop and like concentrate to make sure that, track my breath and make sure that I can breathe. But anyway, so my mom tells me this story, that she has this boyfriend who also experiences sleep paralysis, and he also experiences it as a old witch riding his back. And so he's over and they're hanging out one night, and he tells her like, I haven't been able to get a good night's sleep for like 2 or 3 nights, because every time I fall asleep, the witch comes and she rides my back. So I want to get some sleep. Can you watch me? And if I look like I'm in distress, can you please just wake me up? And so my mom says she agrees, and she says, okay, she will. And so her boyfriend falls asleep, and my mom is reading a book. And she says, as she's reading this book, she notices that some lights are blinking out beyond her door, and she looks, and it's like Christmas lights, like a Christmas tree is out there. And she's like, wow, that's weird. I know there shouldn't be a Christmas tree up in that area. Like, what's going on? And she said then she hears someone knock on the door. So key thing about my mom is my mom thinks that she has learned how to kind of predict her sleep paralysis. So she says that she knows she's going to go into sleep paralysis because every time she hears a knock at the door, and then she hears footsteps coming down the hall, and if she can wake up prior to the footsteps reaching her, then she won't have the sleep paralysis. But every time if she doesn't wake up, she immediately goes into the sleep paralysis. So she says he hears these footsteps coming down the hall. And so she says she starts to like shake her boyfriend and say, hey, she's here, she's here, wake up, wake up. And she says he's not waking up, and it's getting closer, and she's screaming. And then the next thing she knows, her boyfriend is waking her up, shaking her, saying, hey, wake up, wake up. And he said he woke up, and she was screaming in her sleep, you know, or yelling in her sleep that she's coming, wake up, wake up. And so my mom said basically what happened is she stayed up, she fell asleep while watching him, and instead of the witch going into his dream and riding his back, the witch came into her dream to ride her back. And so she said she was like freaked out and told him don't ever ask her to do that again. She's never going to do that again. And I just think that it's the creepiest story. And again, I don't feel that in my sleep paralysis. I don't feel like anyone's touching me or on me or holding me down or anything like that. So I just find that strange and creepy. There you go.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first. When I was 8 years old, my family and I moved to a small town in the Midwest, and it was a farm town. It was built in like the early 1800s. I think it was part of like the Homestead Act or something. And it was, had a bunch of acres, a barn that had burnt down. Like it was an active farm back then. Lots of history. People definitely passed away on the property, that we knew for sure. And man, it wasn't like very obvious as a child. I was super intuitive, and I didn't know what to do with that intuition. So I naturally got a Ouija board. And of course I dragged along my best friend and my sister and a couple other friends on this Ouija board journey, where we would go and sit at the top of the stairs to the basement, and we would turn all the lights off and turn candles on and then ask this thing questions, and it responded. And I don't tell people the story. It sounds psycho. The fact that other people are there to verify all of these things and validate gives me inner peace, but I don't tell people. But it worked. And unlike what I thought would happen when it would move, even when we'd lift all of our hands off of it, it's still moving, is how aggressively it moved. It wasn't gentle. It was like very sharp. And so much time would pass when we were in there talking to this entity as well. Like we would think 10 minutes went by and it would be 2 hours. Like insane. Being little kids, we wanted to know questions and answers like, who are we going to marry when we grow up? Or how many kids are we going to have? Or just questions like that. And every single time we start, it would give us answers at first, like, and it would tell us about itself. We would say like, what's your name? And it would just say demon, D-E-M-O-N, like over and over again. When we would ask questions about me, at first it would like give us answers, and then it would just spell bitch repeatedly, B-I-T-C-H, B-I-T-C-H, B-I-T-C-H. Horrifying, like any question about me. Also, sorry if I seem lackluster. I already told this whole story and it deleted. It was so freaky. Also having like visuals of like hands reaching towards the planchette, like in the candlelight flicker. This entity gave us details saying that it was like buried in the cemetery, a cemetery that was like local, like the name was legit. It gave us like, I think it either gave us a plot number or it was just like the last name. And we did go there, and what we found was crazy. This happened when I was like 8 years old. When we would ask it about itself, it would say demon, that it was a demon, and it would give us facts about it, like that it was like buried in the cemetery, like it was a real cemetery by us. And every time we asked a question about me, it would spell bitch, B-I-T-C-H, B-I-T-C, like repeated, like just it wouldn't stop. It was like the most horrifying. I can't believe I forgot that. Well, I mean, obviously, and I just remember crying, and I didn't understand why it was like that to me, and looking back, I was just a super intuitive kid. I mean, I had imaginary friends, like, I remember weird things, but this is definitely up there of it responding demon and bitch. And I remember, we ended up going to the cemetery, like, the thing gave us a name, I don't remember, it's all written down somewhere in a little kid book, I'm sure, and, maybe I should, like, interview my friend or my sister about it. Part 2 to the unbelievable but completely true ghost story that was my childhood with my Ouija board experience. Before I get started, I did not sleep from watching y'all's stitches of your horror ghost stories. And I believe all of you, and I moved the mirrors away from my bed so quickly last night, and then I fell down a rabbit hole of like blue sage and cedar and juniper, and anyway, neither here nor there. So I got some new coffee. I also ordered some more. They sell it on TikTok Shop for way cheaper than where I was buying it, which, yeah, now I know about TikTok Shop because of this video. So thank you. Anyway, I went digging, y'all, to find what documentation I had, because, you know, I never shut my mouth up back then. I was, like, on Tumblr and MySpace and Facebook. I'm like, I know I wrote about this somewhere. And I looked and I found my Facebook statuses, so here they are. So basically it says that the person we were talking to on the Ouija board claimed to be an 86-year-old woman, and we asked if I was going to have a child or if I was going to get married, you know, like the MASH questions. And then we asked if there was, I think this is this one. Yeah, we asked where she was, and she said in between life and death. And then called me a bitch. And then we have this other one where we ask, is there anyone else who would like to speak to us? And it says yes, and then we say who, and it says demon, and then we said why, and it spelled out he knows God. Like, mind you, we all were lifting our hands up, like, watching it move. I completely forgot about this till I read it. And then we kept trying to ask innocent questions, like, what am I going to go to college for? bitch. Drinking this coffee to stay awake. I'm never going to sleep again. Send me your energy healing tips. But, anyway, the demon that we were speaking to lied. Told us that it was buried in a cemetery. My friend says we were talking to multiple entities. I personally think we were just talking to a demon. Also, I always stutter in the morning, so... But I'll tell you a little bit more about what my friends have to say. My one friend is a mother, so she's obviously tending to her child right now and can't respond right away. And my other friend is a cop, so we're all living lives, probably trying not to think about demons. I'm just weird, I guess. Tell me about the weirdest dream you've had that you don't actually think was a dream at all. I'll go first. About 7 years ago, I had a friend pass away. About 6 months after he passed away, he visited me in a dream. Though it wasn't like any dream I've ever had before, and I am convinced I'm not a religious person or anything, but I was certainly visited by a spirit guide. I am wholly convinced that that was what visited me. Told several of my friends this story through Facebook messages. This is in 2017. And I'll share those right here, what those Facebook messages said. But basically, I was standing next to my bed. This was like the dream. I was standing next to my bed, and there was a woman in all white. She had brown hair. She was like maybe 5'6" or something. She looks at me, and it was so weird because it was as if we were talking, like having a conversation, but no words were being exchanged. She puts her hand on my shoulder. She stands behind me, puts her hand on my shoulder, and all of a sudden in my room is my friend that passed away. And he's wearing what he was wearing at his wake, which is so freaky. And he says, "Hey bud, how's it going?" Something like that. And then I ran into his arms, like crying, and I kept saying, "I'm so sorry," just for the way that he passed away. I was like, "I'm so sorry." And he's like, "It's okay, bud." And I'm like, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I don't know. You're the first person they've let me see." Oh my god, I just got chills. And I think I said something like, "Who?" And then the lady put her hand on my shoulder again, and I just like jolted awake. And I'm not wholly convinced that was a dream, so let me know if you guys want to hear any of my other freaky stories, because I certainly have quite a few. Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So I grew up in a haunted house. The house was built in, I don't know, 1800, whatever it was, really super old. And there was always weird stuff going on there. Well, so my parents went away for a couple weeks on a vacation. They went on a cruise or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But, so we had some friends of the family of ours, you know, hanging out with me and my brother, watching us while they were gone. And, went upstairs in the attic, and, you know, like I said, it's an old house. So, you know, I was just rummaging through some boxes, and, came across this pack of tarot cards, and I took the cards down, you know, and I was just playing like stupid little card games with them. Yeah, I was young. I didn't know anything about tarot cards really or anything like that. I kind of knew what they were, but I was like, yeah, you know, I'll just keep messing with them, playing my card games, this and that. And then like some strange stuff started happening around the house. So like the lady who was watching us, she was sleeping in my parents' room. She woke up one night to the front of the bed bouncing up and down. And she got up and was looking, and we were all sleeping. And so, yeah, that happened. A couple other little things happened. But anyways, so the last time I played with those cards, I remember sitting at the kitchen table, and I took the cards and I put them all back in the pack, and I set the pack of cards down on the table and went to bed. And when I came down the next morning, I noticed the deck of cards had been opened up, and there was one of the steak knives sitting on the table next to him, and there was a couple of holes like in the cards, and not like a hole, but like a good, like just a clean slice right through it, you know. And I picked up the card, and I remember looking at them, and I'm just like, wow, it's like that's interesting. And I happened to look over at the pack, and I noticed there was a hole in the pack, like that same slice, and I put the cards all back in, and I flipped the pack over, and that slice, that puncture went all the way through the pack of cards and into the table, and it made a mark in the table, and not just like a little mark. It was like a good like dent. And this steak knife was in a drawer that was about 10 feet away from the kitchen table. The drawer was still open, and I was sitting there looking at the tarot cards and the table and the steak knife and the hole that went completely through the fucking deck of cards, all right through the fucking deck, man. Shit hit that fucking table and left a goddamn mark. And I was like, okay, I get what's going on here. I'll get rid of these now. So I took them and I tossed them. I don't know if that was the right thing to do, but the shit stopped after that. Let me tell you, scared the fuck out of me. I was like, I'm done. I get it, I'm done. No problem. I get the hint. I took that hint.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
And I'll go second. So these are admittedly not my stories, they're my dad's stories. Just a little background on my father. He doesn't believe in ghosts at all. Not even a little. He thinks that that is made up. It's fake. And now that I've gotten that out of the way, he has experienced the scariest hauntings I've ever heard about in my life. When he was younger, I would say probably about like 9 to 13, in that age range, he had a friend that started getting into like kind of occult weird things. He started feeling a little bit uncomfortable around this friend, and he remembers 2 really specific incidents with this friend that made him stop hanging out with this kid. One of which was they were at a river with a bunch of other boys, and they were swimming, playing as kids do. And this friend in question was in the water next to my father. And while they're playing, my dad looks up, and standing across the river at the tree line, and this is in rural Canada, like in the middle of nowhere Canada, standing at the tree line is that friend. And he's just staring at my dad, and he just goes like this. Mind you, that kid is next to my dad at that time, so he's seeing 2 of them. And the other one just turns around and goes into the woods after beckoning my dad after him. I hate that story. It makes my eyes tear up. I hate that story. But my dad, being a child, still hung out with this kid. So he goes over to his house, and this kid is sitting in this big, like, lazy boy recliner chair. And he's sitting there, and he's kind of just staring at my dad while they're talking, acting super strange. And he looks at my dad, and he goes, "I've been in your dreams." And as soon as he says that, my dad hears, like, pounding on the underside of this kid's chair. He's sitting cross-legged in his chair, not moving, and hears something beating on the underside of the chair. And this kid goes, "I've been in your dreams." And my dad, stone-faced, dead-ass, looks at me and goes, "And the fucked up thing? He had been in my dreams." My father doesn't believe in ghosts. I asked him to explain these to me in, like, a scientific way. He goes, "I was just hallucinating." I was just having a vivid hallucination. Anyway, those are just 2 of my favorite little stories from my father, who swears the ghosts are not real. Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of what's going on with my dad. First things first, yes, I am going to tell more stories. That was the number 1 asked question. Are there more? Yes, there are. There are more of him, there are more of the 2 of us, and there's more of just me on my own, if you're interested in that. But yes, there are more stories. I'm going to do FAQs in this video, and then I will post more stories in a different video, but at the same time. So there's no, like, come back tomorrow. But this is the FAQ video. The other video is on my page. Find it. You're good at this. I believe in you. Okay, another really common question. What were the dreams that this kid said he was in? My dad doesn't really remember the specifics of the dreams themselves, but he does remember that he, as you know, a natural born skeptic, tried to trip this kid up. So he was like, okay, if you were in my dreams, tell me what the dreams were. And he was able to. The kid was able to tell him accurately what the dreams were. And my dad tried to confuse him by saying, you know, for example, he's walking down the hallway and my dad said, okay, and then I went left. And his friend said, no, you went right. And he was always right. Every time my dad tried to trick him, he always had the correct answer. Another popular one, where's that kid now? Believe it or not, he's an accountant. Completely normal life. I don't know what is up with that. After that age, he just grew out of it, got really into math, which maybe is a bigger sign of him being evil, but who was under the chair? We don't know. That's why it's scary. A lot of people, this isn't a question, said, that's not a ghost. I know, don't be pedantic, we're all having fun here. Did the kid have a twin? No. This was a small rural town in Canada. They absolutely would have known if this kid had a secret twin. This is not Pretty Little Liars. Is my dad schizophrenic? Crazy question to ask, I'm not gonna lie. But no. No. And a lot of people were like, well, yeah, hallucinations happen. I know this. I too have read books. However, he has never had any sort of hallucinations, either auditory or visual, ever in his life, aside from these specific incidents. As the question of did anyone else see it or corroborate it, I don't recall if anyone else specifically saw these things, but there is another thing that happened in his life that both my mom and my stepmom have corroborated. Another person commented, and again, not a question, your dad is bi. Okay. Thank you for letting me know. You asked, and I'm delivering. These are more of my dad's ghost stories. First things first, if you were wondering how he reacted to the news that his ghost story has gone viral, I texted him saying that all of the comments agree he did see something paranormal and I've won that decades-long argument, and this was his reply. As you can see, extremely in character, no progress was made here. So one of the first ones is a reoccurring dream that he has had his entire life. Since he was a little kid, in the dream he is being chased down a street he recognizes, usually somewhere close to wherever he's living at the time. He's always the exact age he is in real life, so he's aged up as he's had this dream over the years. And he's being chased down the street by a creature made of shadow, and he knows that whatever happens, he can't let this thing catch him. It's only ever caught him once when he was a kid. It got close to him, and he says he remembers in the dream it pushed him up against a wall, and when he woke up, he had bruises. Don't love that. He's had that reoccurring dream once every 4 or 5 years throughout his whole life. There's no warning. He says it's very unsettling. He doesn't like it. The dream does scare him, but he just thinks it's a dream. However, there is a joint paranormal experience we shared that does relate to that dream, but that's a longer story, so I think I'll make that its own separate thing, because that's going to take a while to explain, because we were both basically having paranormal experiences that were connected, but we didn't realize it until we talked about it weeks later. One time he was with a friend. It might have actually been the same friend in the previous story, because this sounds like something this friend would do. He said that they should have a seance, and so they set up everything for a seance. They turned off all the lights, they lit a bunch of candles, and my dad started to get kind of nervous. He started to have this gut feeling that something wasn't right, and so he was like, I don't want to do this anymore, and he decided to start going around and turning on the lights, and as he's walking up the stairs to go turn on the lights, one of the pictures comes off the wall, and the way he describes it is it was about head level, and it came about 2 feet off of the wall and hit him in the side of the head. And he said we put the picture back up, and he said they spent an hour going through the house trying to make that picture fall down again, banging on the walls, slamming doors, stomping on the floor. They could not get that thing to fall down. And granted, and he, as much as a skeptic as he is, still admits to this day that it came way too far off the wall to just be it fell off the hook. And another one I mentioned in the FAQ video, and this one has been corroborated by my stepmom and my mom. My mom is way more like me, more like, yeah, the paranormal is probably real. My stepmom, very much like my dad. Ghosts aren't real. They're both engineers, by the way, if you couldn't tell by the everything about their personalities. She does not buy into that, but she has admitted that this is real. Both my mom and my stepmom have said that this does happen, and my dad is... this is the only thing that he admits he has no explanation for. He won't say it's paranormal, but it's the one thing he can't come up with a reason for. His bed shakes. every once in a while. It's happened his whole life. Every once in a while, he'll be laying in bed and the bed will shake. And the way that all three of them have described it is it feels like someone is standing at the end of the bed and just grabbing the mattress and doing this with it. And it's very subtle, but you can definitely feel it. And when I talked to my mom about it, she said it was very eerie because she was awake and she felt it and she thought my dad was sleeping or, something like he was twitching in his sleep. And she asked him if he was awake. He says, yes, I'm awake. And she says, do you feel that? And he goes, you can feel it too? It only happened like twice in their marriage. And it's only happened to my stepmom once or twice. So it's very rare. And he has no idea. His explanation on that one is, don't know, could be anything. But if that's the worst this evil spirit can do, no big deal. All right, if you made it that far, thank you. I'm delighted. My dad couldn't care less. Love him to pieces, but this is all fake. So anyway, if you want to hear more, especially about the one that we shared together, that has to be its own whole video, but let me know. Okay, bye. This one I can speak on with a lot more authority because this primarily happened to me. We're done talking about my dad. He's old news. It does involve his recurring dream that he had his whole life, which I talked about in Ghost Stories Part 2, and I will link in the caption. Okay, so this one requires a little backstory on me. When I was a kid, I lived in a house that I now think is deeply haunted. I was, at the time, I think 5 or 6 years old though, and I was a little too young to even really know what ghosts were. I wasn't really aware of that. I just thought everyone had super vivid nightmares every night and was like really terrified of the dark. And I thought that everyone just like had the lights go out whenever they were alone in a room, including like the light switches moving. I thought that was normal. I didn't realize it was paranormal until years later when I asked my parents about it and I said, hey, do you remember our house that we lived in when I was in kindergarten? And my mom, without missing a beat, said that house was evil. That's why we left. Okay. That's great to know years later. But I think that there were two entities in that house. I think there was one that was trying to harm me, and I think there was one that was protecting me. Well, there were more than two, but those were the two primary ones. And I think the one that was trying to protect me is what I referred to for years after as the shadow man. I got the impression that it was an adult man, but he didn't ever make me feel nervous. I felt very safe. I would see him. I slept in my mom's room almost every night because I was terrified of that house. I would see almost every night he would walk from one end of the room, cross the edge of the end of the bed, out through the other wall. Every night, around the same time, I would wake up and he'd be there, and the only way I could describe him was that he was darker than the darkness. But he didn't scare me. Everything else terrified me in that house, but he didn't. I was always very comfortable. I remember waking up from a nightmare one night, and I could have sworn I saw him sitting on the end of my bed. Again, wasn't afraid of him, which brings me back to my dad's recurring dream and our joint paranormal experience. So I was staying at his house for the weekend, and I went to say goodnight to him, and as soon as I walked out of his room, literally the moment I crossed the threshold out of his room and into the hallway, I felt just this pulse of like primal panic and fear, and I remember thinking to myself, there's something waiting on the stairs, and I was just so afraid. I was probably 12 or 13 at the time, and I went back to my room, and I was too afraid to even turn out the lights. I slept with the lights on all night. I barely slept. I remember laying on my back with the blankets pulled all the way up to my chin, just staring at the ceiling, motionless. I was too afraid to go to the bathroom. I was too afraid to turn off the light. I was just paralyzed with fear, and I didn't really know why. It had come so suddenly. The next night, night number 2, the same thing. The moment I leave his room, I feel this pulse of fear. I'm immediately just paralyzed with it. I'm up most of the night, lights on, too afraid to sleep. The third night, night number 3, in the middle of the night, I had finally gotten really sick of it, and because I remember the shadow man being protective of me as a kid, I remember thinking to myself, if you were ever real, I need you now. And instantly, I felt better. It was like I had never been worried. I was never afraid. I was completely fine. I reached over and turned out the lights and went to bed and slept normally. Weeks later, I was telling my dad about this experience, and, he was kind of like, I don't know, that sounds kind of fake. But now that you mention it, he goes on to tell me that those same 3 nights, he had been having that reoccurring dream where he was being chased by a creature made of shadow coming from the darkness. And this is the only time really in his life that he's had this dream back to back like this. And he says he was having it every night and it was getting progressively closer. And then on the third night, he woke up in the middle of the dream because he heard something in his room say, "Hello?" And that's exactly the same time that I suddenly felt completely fine. I like to think of myself as a fairly scientific-minded individual, and I know a lot of this is going to sound kind of crazy, but I've told these stories so many times over the years because I do remember them so vividly, and they impacted me greatly as a child. I don't know if it's paranormal. I don't know if it's just a weird coincidence. I don't know if it's a kid's imagination. I'm not the authority on that one, but it is a very fun and spooky story that my dad to this day denies. He wasn't there for that mentally, I don't think. But it did happen, and it's bananas.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
I got one for you. So when I was 19, I moved into this house after a breakup, and I found this room on Facebook Marketplace. This girl was selling her room or whatever, subleasing it, and it was, I think, $250 a month, and I was like, yeah, let's go. So I moved into this place, and it is a very old home. It was made out of local stone, and it was on this block that all the houses were made out of local stone, and if they weren't made out of local stone, they would not still be standing. I'll just say that. They're very old. So this house had been converted into separate apartments, and I was living in a room that you had to walk through a bathroom to get to, and this room is also connected to another bedroom, but we just put like furniture in front of it, so it kind of felt like a bedroom. So that's where I was staying. And the first night that I was sleeping there, I was woken up out of a dream, don't know what I was dreaming about, and I saw this woman just like hovering over me, looking at me. And I looked at her for a few seconds, and when she realized I was looking at her, I just saw her eyes get really wide, and she looked nervous, and she disappeared. And I've never really given that a lot of credit because I was waking up out of a dream. You know, sometimes you just see things. I don't know. But then the next day when I was leaving to go do something else, you know, I was opening my door, going through the bathroom to get out of the house. I swore that I saw someone like crouched in the corner of the shower. And I thought that was weird. But because the night before and how I was like, that was probably just a dream. I'm probably just paranoid right now. I'm not going to give it any credit. So time goes on, right? And I get a cat. Love the little thing. She's precious. And it gets to a point where, you know, I'm 19. I'm a full-time college student. Her food was more expensive than mine, and I couldn't afford to keep her anymore. So one of my friends took her, and I noticed as soon as she was gone that things started to get a little hairy. Like from that day forward till I moved out, every single day something happened. Didn't matter if it was daytime, nighttime, or anything. But that little figure that I had seen crouched in the shower was a little boy. And he was very upset that my cat was not there anymore. So what did he do? He terrorized me. Like, it got to the point where I had to rearrange my room so when I would wake up and roll over in the middle of the night, I wouldn't see him because he would stand in the corner where I had my cat's stuff as if like protesting that she was gone. And that was every single night from that point on. During the day, I would have hangers and clothes fly out of my closet. Did not matter. Door would open, closet and clothes would just fall out. And it became a normal thing, you know, like I would see him and I wouldn't think twice about it because I didn't want to engage. I didn't want to encourage it. So what I would do is I wouldn't say anything. If he was really scaring me, I'd go to someone else's house. I'd just dip out because, you know, like child spirits, you don't really know if it's a real child or not. I think this was a real child because he was just throwing tantrums and taking it all out on me. The scariest thing that ever happened with him, though, was I was doing laundry one day. I guess my cat had probably been gone for a couple months now, and I'd become adjusted to seeing him. It wasn't anything new. And I was folding my laundry on my bed, and I watched him crawl out of my closet, look at me, and crawl underneath my bed. It actually makes me sick to my stomach, even thinking about it, because I don't know if you've seen any scary movie. It was horrifying. So yeah, I dipped. I didn't come back for like 2 days because that was horrifying. And before I left though, I did get on my hands and knees and look under the bed to see if he was there. One of the bravest moments of my life, he wasn't. And at that point, I was already done. You know, I didn't care that I didn't see him. I was done. So, I mean, my laundry was clean. It didn't matter. I dipped. And from that point on, it never got that bad again, but he was almost always in the shower when I would be leaving. And the way that our bathroom was set up, like the mirror faced the shower, and there would be times where like I would be getting ready. I'm crying. I would be getting ready, and I would see his little stinking head pop up in the mirror. And I had to start sleeping with a face mask because I would roll over in the middle of the night and he would either be in the corner of my cat's stuff, or he would be at the end of my bed, or he'd be in another corner. Like it was something straight out of Insidious. And I'd say that's one of the worst ghost stories I have at that house, definitely, because I never saw that woman again. There was one figure I kept seeing in the kitchen, but I never saw their face. They only stood with their back to me. So, you know, I think our timelines were just crossing or something, but no one else in the house that lived there ever had any encounters that I know of. And yeah, so that's how I was terrorized by a little child, ghost, spirit, for having to get rid of a cat, for being poor, essentially. Hello, welcome to the clarity video for my ghost boy story, because there has been literally hundreds of questions, and understandably so. So we're gonna get the biggest one out of the way. Am I schizophrenic? No, sorry. If I was, everything would be a whole lot easier to explain and rationalize, but the truth of the reality is I'm not. I have no history of it. I have no history of hallucinations outside of sleep paralysis. And that is so common that it's just not worth looking into. So sorry to disappoint. I'm clinically sane, actually. Yeah, I do have a sixth sense, I guess. I have seen spirits my entire life, and a lot of the women in my family have. It's a very common trait among our family line, and a lot of us have shared experiences. Like, you know, stereotypical story, I grew up in a haunted house. There was 5 separate spirits that I saw my entire life, and I have had shared experiences with my family, our friends, our neighbors even. So it's not something I'm not used to, which is part of the reason I didn't move out after having such a scary interaction with that little demon child, whatever he was. Because, yeah, it was scary financially. It made sense for me to stay there, and it was not something that I hadn't heard of before. It wasn't something that I wasn't adjusted to. You know, at that point in time in my spiritual journey, I wasn't able to set harsh boundaries with spirits, which is something I've learned over time. And so I just pretended to do what all the men in my family have done my whole life. See nothing, hear nothing. Did I see everything? Yeah, I did. I didn't record any of it. I'm so sorry I didn't. It just simply was not within my energy realm to bring out my camera and start recording stuff. Because it's also one of those things where I swear every time you try to get a video of something, nothing happens. And he was pretty devious, but he wasn't necessarily willing to put on a show for me. One of the biggest questions I've got is, why I didn't interact with this thing. I'm not convinced it was a human spirit. I have seen ghosts, spirits my entire life, and the way that this one presented itself to me, I didn't trust it. He showed up as a full body apparition, head to toe, and it was almost like he had a blur filter on. I could see features, but I couldn't distinguish any details. The only thing I could really tell about him was he had 2 sunken holes for eyes. There was nothing there, no light, no glimmer, just dark holes in the middle of his head. And he was also fully grayscale, which I don't know if that was just the lighting he kept himself in or if that was real. But I never saw him with any specific colors on, and I guess he was probably between the ages of like 7 to 10. He was definitely like a little kid, but I don't have a kid. I don't know how big they get. I guess the best thing I could compare him to is the child jumping out of the cabinet in Insidious. It's cliche, but that's like, it's not a 1-for-1, but that's the closest you're gonna get in regards to understanding what this thing looked like. Of course, literally that house in particular is the only home I've lived in where I have not had any shared experiences about spirits or anything. Every other house I've lived in, I can corroborate every single story. This one I can't, which is why I was like, oh, this will be perfect for this trend, because my roommates didn't even believe me. But I double checked with my roommates. None of them saw anything. They did all get weird vibes from the room that I stayed in, and that was kind of the central area for activity. So, I don't know. The girl who I rented the room from, haven't heard from her in literal years. So, you know, it's kind of fun that it's just a mystery, but I haven't looked into the history of the house. It's old as fuck, and my landlord was a douchebag, so he was gonna be worthless to talk to. I have so many more stories. If you're willing to hear them, let me know. I have hundreds. I can definitely say this wasn't the scariest experience I've had. It was up there, but that little kid, that was not a human. I'll tell you that much. So as time goes on, and you know, like retrospectively, I guess I do feel kind of bad for not setting up an altar or anything, or offering him anything, because I think it would have brought me peace of mind and maybe brought peace to the whole space. But you know, it is what it is. I was a kid. I was an idiot. In that point in my life, my spiritual journey, I had not learned how to set boundaries with spirits. And yeah, I just lived on and carried on because I didn't know what else to do. And yeah, I was poor, so yeah. Anyway, thanks. Okay, so one time I had a first date that ended up in me being followed by whatever lived in this guy's house, and I had to do a seance in the middle of the night. Sorry if there's a lot of background noise. There's band practice going on at my house, so I'm like hanging out a window. But I've tried to tell this story probably 3 times now. Every single time I try to upload it, doesn't upload, goes straight to save to drafts. And then when I look in my drafts, there's so many added clips that are just black space. Like the first video I recorded, I think was 6 minutes, and then it was 17 minutes when I looked back at it in my drafts, and it was all mixed around, all the clips were messed up. So my boyfriend thinks that whatever I'm telling the story about does not want me to out it, but I got rid of it once, I can do it again. This story takes place about like 4 or 5 years ago, and I had this waiter who I thought was cute, so I left him my number, and things led to another, so we ended up going out for lunch one day. So after lunch, we go back to his house to hang out, and while we're there, we're partaking in activities such as, and who do I meet while I'm at his house? I meet this guy's dad. I meet this man's dad on the first date. Not only do I meet this guy's dad, I end up smoking with him too. I'm just gonna add that where these activities took place, everything we did was actually legal and recreational. So there's that. But so we get to talking, and this guy's dad asks me if I believe in ghosts, and I'm like, oh, guess what? Yes, I do, and I have hundreds of stories. He was like, well, don't really care to hear those right now. You should follow me. So what does my dumbass do? My dumbass goes, yes, sir. I follow this man I just met to the back of the home of this other man who I barely know. And they're trustworthy people. It's all fine, thankfully. But so he walks me up to a bedroom and he says, go in there. I want you to tell me what it feels like. The amount of red flags at this point I was conscious of, but in my head I was like, I'm gonna do it for the story, all right? I'm gonna tell the girls about this one. So I go into this room and it feels like I am 10 feet underwater. As soon as I cross the threshold walking into this bedroom, I can see that there's a fan in there circulating just like that, but there's no movement at all. It feels stale, it feels crusty, I feel icky, I feel heavy, I feel ill, nothing good. I immediately start to get clammy and claustrophobic, so I step out and I tell him, I'm like, what is that? And he goes, it's the attic. So I look and yeah, matter of fact, there is a latch up to the attic in that bedroom, and I'm like, why don't you seal it? And he goes, no, it's not because the attic's in there, it's what's in the attic. He goes on to tell me that this bedroom was one that he was staying in, but he had to start sleeping on the couch permanently or set up another room in the other guy's bedroom because he could not sleep in there. He thought he was gonna die. He was having dreams of being choked. He was waking up suffocating. He would wake up to a tall figure standing over him, and he just got sick of it. So he dipped. And by dipped, I mean moved 10 feet out the room. He could only be in there for a couple minutes at a time, and I was in there for maybe 90 seconds, and I never wished to ever go back in that room again, and I never did. So the rest of the afternoon, we are just sitting outside talking about his encounters and what's been going on, other things that we've both seen, and I just really cannot shake that icky feeling. It just will not go away, and dinner time rolls around and I get out of there, all right? Cool first date, I had a really good time hanging out with your dad. So I go home, carry on as usual, make dinner, whatever, go to bed, and still just feel gross, still feel claustrophobic in my own body, icky. I don't really remember what I ended up doing that evening, but I do remember having a very hard time falling asleep. As soon as I tried to fall asleep, it sounded like things started to move around the house, objects or people or whatever, and I knew at that point all my roommates were asleep. I lived in a house with 5 different people, and there's always quiet hours, and it was quiet. So I try to ignore it because I just think it's one of my roommates moving about the house, whatever. And no, it doesn't cease, it doesn't go away, and it doesn't sound like anyone is outside of their room moving around. It doesn't sound like crashing from other rooms, and I kind of start to realize, oh, that's coming from my room. That's why I can't sleep. That's why I haven't shook this icky, gross-ass feeling, is because something is in here with me. So I just sit there and listen to it for a little bit, because I am just hoping that whatever it is goes away. That house, everyone, all the roommates, we had stories there, but it was really persistent, and that just wasn't a normal occurrence there. So I sat up eventually. What the fuck did I see when I sat up? I saw a 6 to 8 foot figure. I don't know, I was laying down just in my room. And when I say figure, I mean a tall, dark shadow silhouette. No features, nothing. But I could see the contour of its head turn to look at me, and that's when I knew, oh, I've been followed. Whatever this thing is attached itself to me because it knew I could sense it, and I don't know, maybe it just wanted to check out where I lived, but one way or another, the reason I couldn't shake that feeling is because I didn't shake it. It latched onto me. What I do next, I do not offer as professional advice. I did it because I didn't know what else to do, and I had just bought a bunch of these candles that I was like, oh, perfect, I'm gonna use these. So I got these candles, and they're called protector candles, They were called that based off of the herbs that they used to make them. Don't know what the herbs are. I got them from a store called Aquarius in Kansas City. And the only reason I picked them up was because they smelled like my grandma. And I was like, this is going to be a great gift for my family. They smell like grandma. So shout out to Grandma Helen. She was looking out for me. So I just have a bunch of these candles. So I set like 5 up in a circle and I light a stick of Palo Santo. And mind you, like, this thing is in the corner of the room this whole time I'm doing this. And I'm scared, but I am also hyper aware of the fact that, like, 9 times out of 10 you tell something to go away, it will. This one didn't want to leave, but I don't know, I was just feeling really bold. I've seen a lot of people comment that I'm white. I'm white. I'm so white that, like, I'm convinced I could get in a fist fight. I couldn't. I'm hyper aware of the fact that, like, I won't survive most natural disasters, but I'll put up a fight, why not? Anyway, so I set these candles up in a circle. I get a stick of Palo Santo, light the stick, I do a little cleansing myself. I very slowly move around the perimeters of my room, bless my room. I make a statement saying, like, only positive energy in this room. Only my ancestors are able to come in here if they are acting as guidances. And that's not a real word. But so I just make these statements that, like, if you are a negative spirit, you gotta go. I still hear stuff like shifting about my room periodically as I'm doing this. So I use that stick and I light all of those candles that are in a circle, and I sit in between all those candles in the circle. And for the next, like, I don't know, 30 minutes, I just sit there and say these chants over and over and over again. If you're a negative spirit, you cannot stay here. I know where you come from. You must go back home. You are not allowed to be attached to me. I do not permit you into my life. I do not permit you access into this space, access into this home. You are not allowed to disturb my roommates, blah, blah, blah. And I do that until I stop hearing things shift around the house. I didn't really know when I stopped, but I know I stopped when things settled down. And I just blew out all the candles. I said one final statement, and I took my ass to bed. Lo and behold, next day, nothing. I was able to sleep easy through the night, and I never saw that thing ever again. Never went back to that man's house ever again. And yeah, that's how I do a seance from a bad first date. It worked for me. But yeah, that was a tough first date. So that was one of my first dates. Love to know about yours. When I was 19, I moved into a house with 5 people and a dead lady and her dog. The house was bought by one of the roommates' parents, and so we all lived in it and paid rent to the parents. And it was a 10 out of 10 deal, affordable, close to my school, and it was awesome. So I moved in there, and it wasn't long before things started to get a little weird. And weird was like the supernatural part. I'd say one of my roommates was very odd. She was the scariest part of that entire experience living there, because she did not leave her room when anyone else was awake or out in the living areas. And if she did, she would only do it at night and walk around with a flashlight. I locked my door at night, okay? But after she moved out, things still stayed weird. So the dead lady who became our 6th roommate was the woman who died in that house before my roommate's parents had bought it up. And I'm 100% sure her dog died there too. All of us would see and hear this woman. Even the roommates who, like, weren't super in tune with anything. And so there was one time, I'd probably been living at the house for, I want to say, like, a year at this point. And I was in the living room with my roommate, middle of the day, and I said out loud, I was like, I've never been in the attic before. I think I want to check it out. Immediately, we heard a huge bang come from the attic. Never before had either of us seen that or heard that. Never again did we. Because guess what? I never went in the attic. That was a big no. The way that she mostly manifested was her feet, which sounds crazy, but you would see, like, from her mid-calf to her feet, like an apparition that would just like fade as it went up, almost like a nightgown that just would like fade into oblivion. You would see that in doorways, and specifically the doorway that you would walk through to get to all the bedrooms. And I cannot tell you how many times I was just walking through the house, like turned off the kitchen light, went through the living room to go to my bedroom, and as I was like looking up to go through that doorway, I would just walk through this woman's feet. You would see them and you'd walk through them, and it was like dust just evaporating. And I always felt really bad when I did that, so I always said sorry, my bad, didn't see ya. You know, we just treated her like another person in the house. She didn't bother us, I didn't bother her. There were times where I would come home after work or return from someone's house, and my roommate would be in the kitchen, and she would look at me and she'd go, "When did you leave?" And I'd be like, "I haven't been home all day." And she'd be like, "What do you mean? I heard you in your room talking to someone." No, you didn't. But so we figured out that that roommate was hearing this woman call someone's name over and over and over again. And the name that she was calling was the name of this deceased woman's sister, who is still alive, I'm fairly certain. But the roommate whose parents bought the house knew a little bit about this deceased roommate's history and her like family tree, and the name that we were hearing, I never heard it personally, but the name that was being heard was the sister's name, and she was calling out to her sister, and my roommate just thought it was me. It wasn't. My favorite part about living in that house was of the dog. We didn't have dogs in that house, we only had cats, and you would think, oh, cats, they ward off spirits. Bad spirits, not all of them. There was so many times that my roommate would try to fight me, and I don't mean actually fight, but she would be mad at me because she thought I brought a dog into the house, because I was the most likely to do that, which is true. But I wasn't going to bring a dog into the house because I knew better. There was cats there, blah, blah, blah. But all of us, on the main floor, in the basement, we would hear a dog running in circles around the house. You could hear it panting. You could hear its feet on the floor. You could hear the jingle of its collar. All of us heard it multiple times in the night. So it was kind of sweet to know that our dead roommate and her dead dog were together. Like, I thought that was actually very endearing and kind that they were still playing together and having fun. Especially when all of us roommates were together, because I'd say most of us had some sort of sixth sense in that home. Whenever all of us were in a room together hanging out, specifically one of the roommates' bedrooms, all of us would experience something. It didn't matter if we were in there for 15 minutes or 90 seconds. One of my roommates would see this woman walk by her room. One of my roommates would hear it. I would hear it. We've all seen these shadows walk by. There was one point in time where we were all sitting in the living room in that doorway where I always saw her feet. We all turned and saw just like this woman's apparition like standing there looking at us. And it never felt intimidating. It just felt like she was like, "What are you guys doing in my house?" That spirit was one that only one time truly scared the absolute fucking shit out of me. I don't know if I even feel comfortable telling that story online, because it's a story I haven't even told the people I lived with at the time, because they still live there and I don't want to ruin it for them. But that little dog, I think that little dog was one of my favorite ghost stories, because that was so cute, and all of us would hear it in tandem. And the next morning, we'd all be sitting around being like, "Did you let the dog in? I didn't let the dog in." Fingers were always pointed at me, but dogs deserve homes too, even the dead ones. And all dogs go to heaven, but some dogs stay to hang out with their dead owners.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
First, let me preface this by saying I never believed in ghosts. I never believed in the supernatural. I thought there was a logical explanation for everything. About 10 years ago, a lady in my neighborhood asked me to overtake a house to be the caregiver for the house and to start a Airbnb with the house, kind of an inn, a bed and breakfast type deal. So I went and looked at the house. It was a beautiful 1932 house, gorgeous floors. I mean, it was just a beautiful home. Everything in the home was original to the home. I mean, it was, 1932, plaster walls. It was great. So I started on cleaning the house. I was upstairs. The house was on a hill. It was like one side of the house was built on a hill. The other side of the house was built off of the hill. So one corner of the house was actually 3 stories off the ground, whereas the other corner was like 2 stories. I was working in one of the bathrooms, the upstairs corner bathroom, cleaning, and I heard a big pop, big boom, and I was like, what was that? It was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and it was on the outside of the house, like someone had punched the outside of the house. I was so exhausted, I just, it was whatever. So fast forward maybe a month or two, I'd always felt kind of weird in the house, like I was being watched, because it was a big house, big open floor plan. And my best friend came in and said, "Have you ever seen anything in this house?" I said, "No, why do you ask?" And she said, "Because there is a woman standing in that kitchen who has a bouffant hairstyle, a crinoline dress, and she loves you because you take care of her house. And there's a little boy over there at the foot of your steps, sitting on the steps looking at you, glaring at you because he cannot stand you. And then there are 2 people upstairs. You don't have to worry about them. They're just kind of, but there's something in your basement that is wicked evil, and you don't want to mess with that." About 3 weeks later, I am a performer. I was directing a show, and I was meeting with the costumer of the show, and she walked into my house, and this costumer does not know my best friend, and she walked into the house, and she said, "Have you ever seen anything in this house?" And I went, "No, why do you ask?" And she said, "There's a woman standing in your kitchen at your sink, and she has black bouffant hair, and there's a little boy sitting on your base of your steps, and he looks angry. There's something upstairs, don't worry about them, but whatever that is in your basement, that is evil. It's evil, be careful." And I went, interesting. Now, mind you, the 2 of them did not know each other. A few weeks later, I was sitting at my piano practicing, and it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was exhausted, I was tired, and up behind my left ear, I heard something go, and honey, I stood up, I turned the lights off to my music room, I went to bed and locked the door. And I always lock my door when I go to bed. It's just a habit from living in the city. I lock, of course, the house door and then the bedroom door. This bedroom had a padlock on it, actually. I woke up about 4 o'clock in the morning, and my door was standing wide open because I could see all the way into the music room, into the living room. And I forgot to mention that every night at 1:22 in the morning, something would drop on the ceiling above. Clockwork, every single night at 1:22 in the morning. Well, one night I was in my bedroom, and I heard something talking in the living room. And again, my door was shut. My bedroom door was shut and locked. And I heard talking in the living room, and I think, did I leave the TV on? And so I open my door, and I slowly make my way through the music room into the living room and look around the corner, and there's no noise. TV is off. And I quickly go back into my bedroom, close the door, and call one of my good friends and said, "Get over here now. Something is going down in this house." He gets there. Well, before he gets there, I hear something outside of my door, and outside my door, I hear a child crying. And I hear him being reprimanded by a woman. And I hear the child, Mama. And he said, Mama. And I had a rear entrance out of the bedroom onto a beautiful big screened-in porch. I was out. I was gone. Peace. So I go and I spend the night with my mother. The next day, I call my best friend, and I'm like, the first person who said that they sensed something in there. I call my best friend, and I'm like, look, this is what happened. She said, okay, I will meet you there this evening with my husband. So she comes in and she brings oil. She's super religious, more spiritual, I should say. She brings oil, and she's like, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go to starting upstairs and going all the way around and down into the bottom level, all the way around. I want you to go above each door, above in each windowsill, and say, in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, I command you to leave. So we did that, and we get all the way down. We get to the very front door, which was the last thing to do. And I'm up above the door, and I do the sign of the cross with the oil and say, in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, I command you to leave. And all of a sudden, the power in the house goes out. So I look out my windows. I thought it was a storm. This was late spring. I look out my windows, and all of my neighbors, their power is on. And I look at my best friend. I said, do you notice anything? And she's like, yeah, their power's on, but yours isn't. I call our power company to see if there's an outage in the area. And I'm on the phone with them. And at the 15-minute mark from when that happened, the lights came back on. And I said, I don't understand why 15 minutes. Like, why? And my friend said, you were being mocked. Whatever was in your basement was the last to leave. And they were mocking the Holy Trinity. There were 5 spirits in the house. 3 times 5 is 15. They were mocking the Holy Trinity. So after that house felt so clean. It was empty. There was nothing there. And it was amazing. So that's my story.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, I'm going to try to do my best to talk about this quickly and also without getting too much of an adrenaline dump and shaking, because it's still to this day when I remember the story freaks me the hell out. I grew up in a very haunted house in Colorado. We found out it wasn't the house over time, it was the land. We actually did have a medium come and cleanse the house after my mom's first bout of cancer. Tons of stuff happened. I could literally tell story after story after story. We lived there for 30 years. It was bad enough that my dad actually did ask the realtor when he sold the house if he had to disclose to the new occupants that it was haunted. We found out over time, talking to other neighbors, they all had the same issues. It was the land this subdivision was built on. So the scariest thing, it was actually like a succession of things, but when we first moved in there, it was a 3-story walkout basement house built on a hillside, and I had the basement room as the oldest kid. And there was one night where I woke up, it sounded like people were banging on the doors. There was 2 entrances to my room. It sounded like they were running back and forth and trying to get in. I actually heard things in the playroom down there, like tumbling out of the cabinets and going all over the place. And when I finally worked up the courage, I turned on all the lights in my room, and one of the doors was a quick right and then left up the stairs to get up to the main level, turn around, and then go up again up to where my parents were sleeping. I was 12 or 13 at the time when this happened. I think it was about 13. So I hear all this happening. I suck up my strength to like go run. And as I start to open the door, somebody, wham, like hits the door, which made me fly back to my bed, pull up the covers. I didn't have a phone down there. Again, this is long before cell phones, so I had no phone, no way to call 911 or say somebody's broken into the house, nothing. So instead I took my boombox stereo and I turned the music up full volume. I was 2 floors below my parents' bedroom, and I thought, surely if I turn the music up all the way, they'll know something is wrong. It's about 3 in. My dad did wake up, felt like something was wrong, came downstairs, saw that all my lights were on and that my music was blaring, and couldn't wake me up. The playroom, not destroyed. There was nobody down there. Nobody had broken in. Everything was sealed shut. He was so freaked out, he moved me immediately the next day up to my youngest brother's room, had him stay with my other brother while they moved my bedroom upstairs, because my dad was like, I only woke up thinking something was wrong. He didn't hear the music until he opened the basement door, and he was like, if somebody actually broke in, we wouldn't hear what was going on. So I told you that story to tell you this story. So they moved me up. It's maybe 2 nights later. I am sleeping on my brother's bed, looking down. He was at the end of the hallway from the top stairs on the 3rd floor. And it was a direct line of sight to my parents' bedroom. And I was so freaked out about what had happened. I was sleeping with the door open so I could see to their bedroom and feel like, you know, I was kind of safe enough to get to them if I needed them. I woke up in the middle of the night to a slamming sound coming from the basement. And it sounded like doors were slamming somewhere in the house. Then I heard what sounded like running heavy footsteps up the basement stairs. It sounded like the basement door was kicked open and that someone had run around on the hardwood floors to the base of the other stairs and had run up those stairs and then stopped. Now, I was not staring down the hallway when I heard this. I was kind of like looking around, and then I looked at the base of the stairs, and I'm going to show you what I saw. Okay, so imagine that this is the top flight of the stair. So there's a whole wall coming this way and the railing for the stairs. I literally saw something like coming up this way with its hands, and it was like a black shape just looking at me down the hallway like this through the bars. I took in a big, deep breath, and I think I called for my mom, and this thing shot off like a light up the stairs. So it takes off up the stairs and like on all fours starts zooming this dark shadow thing towards my brother's door. And the door I could almost touch from the bed. So I just shot out of bed and slammed the door shut. And I mean, I screamed bloody murder. I woke up the whole house. Nothing hit the door. Nothing else happened. But of course, my dad took off out of bed and ran towards my brother's room. It's like, what the hell is going on? None of the doors were open. The basement door was locked. No one had broken in. And I, after that point, until we got me moved into my other room, slept with that door shut. There are so many things that happened in that house. Like I, for a long time, could not sleep with a mirror in the same room as me because of things I saw. There was an entity that several people saw that my family didn't talk about for a very long time until we kind of, once we had the medium in, people kind of figured out something weird was going on with our house. But I have tons of stories. And I actually, if that story sounds familiar, I shared it on last podcast on the left several years ago. And I remember seeing a bunch of comments of people saying like, there's no way that's true. People lie about this stuff all the time. I am telling you, on my life, my child's life, my family's lives, this shit happened. And it happened so often. Like my mom would leave the house and call somebody from the front porch and say, I'm scared to be here alone. Everybody had something happen. Everybody. Like it just was, it was a very active house. I could tell stories for hours. So what had happened on the land was twofold. We figured out through public land records after the medium came that one of the things was that we were situated outside of a huge former cattle ranch from the 1800s. And we were situated, our land had like the previous road for the ranch kind of cutting through it. So this would have been like where all the migrant ranchers and farm workers, plus all of the commerce in and out of this gigantic ranch would have gone through. And there was also a 2-building like outcropping for the people that worked on the ranch. So it would have been like dry goods and like post service or communications. That was also long since gone. Then the medium had also said that she saw the remnants of a really terrible battle that would have happened with the native tribes in the area long before the Europeans came in and kicked them off of their own land. So that's kind of what we were told had happened, that there was a lot of negative energy from the residuals from the traveling road stuff. And then also we had a very old entity from the blood spilled on the land as well, which given some of the other stories I have totally makes sense. In addition, so we were on a hill, and at the bottom of the hill was a small creek. If you've ever been to that part of the country or Colorado, like a small creek is a very small creek. It's like maybe 2 feet wide at the most, but that was also original. It was part of the original kind of land/property lines, and it was part of the aggregation stuff for the giant cattle ranch. So I know a lot of paranormal people believe that water is a conduit for really extra, like supercharging paranormal activity. And so maybe that was part of it.